During the Grips conflict, the big mobile suit fad of the time was transformable machines, something that inevitably began an arms race on each side. And for the Federation, this began shortly after the 1-year war with the production of the RX-78E Gundam GT-Four, a transformable mobile suit that would unfortunately suffer many of the same problems as other transformable mobile suits. The transformation mechanism was too complex and resulted in a machine that was structurally too weak. And sadly for the machine, unlike what happened with the Delta Gundam, the plans for the GT-Four were shelved, never to be seen again. Instead, it's said that the engineers who worked on it would instead go on to work on the Gapland and the Asshimar, where the knowledge gained from the GT-Four would serve as a basis. So if after this video you want to buy some cool Asshimar stuff, you might want to give Buy a shot, the proxy buying service that allows you to buy anything from Japan at the lowest prices in the business. They're compatible with websites like Mercari, Rakuten, and Yahoo Auctions, where you can often find awesome Gundam-related items at great prices, including premium Bandai, but they only ship to Japan. And this is where Buy steps in to help you with getting those great deals. You can either browse those websites through the Buy website or the websites themselves and then paste the URL on Buy. Then you simply click the Buy It Now button or the Place Bid button and Buy does the rest. Then once those products arrive at their warehouse, they'll keep the item for free for up to 30 days, so you can easily combine the shipping of multiple items. And to easily find what you're looking for, here's a Kakarot pro tip. Use the Japanese writing of the mobile suit or character you're looking for, which in 99.99% of cases will be listed on their Gundam Wiki article. And when it comes to auctions, this is another one of Buy's big selling points. Their bidding system is instant, and you also only have to pay once you win. So there's no need to upfront any money for an expensive auction when you're not even sure you're going to win the damn thing. And talking about money, by signing up through the link down below, you'll get 2,000 yen off of your first purchase on Buy. So good luck hunting those deals, and now let's have a closer look at the history of the Flying Donut. Throughout the 1-year war, both the Federation and Zeon had employed their own versions of the subflight system for mobile suits. And after the war, the Federation continued their research in this field with the Base Jabber and the Dodai Kai. Two systems that would prove to be immensely successful and would soon see use all over the globe. But during their development and testing, shortcomings also came to light. They took up extra space in the hangar, had low climb rates, weren't suited to be attack aircraft, and if destroyed, it would be a huge problem for the deployability of the mobile suit that was supposed to go on it. So because of this, the Federation also decided to begin investing in the research of transformable machines. This then led to the development of the Asshimar at the Oakland New Type Labs, the first successful transformable mobile suit. And unlike later variable machines, the Asshimar was developed at a time that the movable frame hadn't yet been finalized. So instead, a so-called drum frame was developed from the Jim Quell's early form of movable frame. It's also said that some aspects of this drum frame were taken from the Cattle Mobile Worker Unit. And thanks to this new frame, it was sturdy enough to sustain itself under gravity, and thanks to the magnet coating that was applied to the joints, it was able to pull off the transformation in half a second. This gave the Asshimar incredible freedom during combat, as it could quickly close in on enemies in mobile armor mode, transform to engage in hand-to-hand combat, and transform again to either disengage or move on to its next target. And thanks to the magnet coating I just mentioned, it was definitely not a pushover either. This machine could easily go toe-to-toe with even the latest AUG machines. However, the only weapon it had at its disposal to deal with them were either its fists or its own purpose-built large beam rifle. As with everything on the Asshimar, it was designed to be as aerodynamic as possible, and also packed a serious punch with its 2.6 megawatts. It could fire either a single beam or a burst beam, resulting in a very unusual looking beam pattern. Its head then was also a technological marvel. It featured various radar and sensor equipment for during high-speed flight. The blade antenna also had differential pressure sensors, and rather than a single mono-eye, it also had 3 extra sub-mono-eyes. And despite all of this, the Asshimar was still relatively cheap to produce and would soon enter mass production. At first, it was only stationed at bases in North America, but after gaining the Titan's support, it was stationed all over the Earth. However, despite being a revolutionary design, or perhaps because it was a revolutionary design, the machine wasn't without its flaws either. Because it was armed with only a single beam rifle, pilots began demanding a unit with more firepower, something that led to the development of the Gaplant. And there were supposedly also a number of crashes due to the machine's rough flight characteristics, which then led to the slow withdrawal of this once widespread machine. A fact that could also explain why this machine suddenly seems to vanish after the Grips War. But not before spawning a number of variants and a successor. One of those variants being the Asshimar Danda-Chakra. This machine belonged to Lieutenant Commander Brader and started its life as just a standard Asshimar. But then, after receiving heavy damage, it wasn't just repaired, but also overhauled and upgraded in a variety of ways. The unit had thicker armor, mostly on the arms, shoulders, and head. It had a stronger antenna, the eye sensor was now on an X-rail shape with the sub-eyes now always being visible, and the legs were completely different. They were made lighter and more powerful, and in mobile armor mode they now also folded into the main body for even better aerodynamics. And the final big change were the weapons. The large beam rifle was replaced by a 4-barreled mega particle cannon, and it also got extra weapons. 2 beam sabers, 1 on each forearm, 2 beam pistols usable in both mobile suit and mobile armor mode, and 4 air-to-ground missiles. Our second variant then is the EWAC version. But for the history of this machine, we have to go all the way back to one of the original prototypes of the Asshimar, the space prototype. A unit whose original shape has unfortunately been lost to time. What we do know though is that this machine was made to test out the Asshimar's transformation mechanism. And this was done in space because 0G would put less stress on the frame. At some point then, the Titans became interested in this machine and forcibly requisitioned it to begin development of their own version of the Asshimar, something that would initially result in the prototype Asshimar TR-3 Kehaar space type, a unit whose test data would prove invaluable for the development of the Gundam TR-6 wound Warsis frame. After the space tests were complete then, the unit was overhauled for atmospheric testing. And it's no coincidence that the machine now looks a lot more like the Asshimar that we're all familiar with. During the time that the Titans were playing around with their new toy, the Federation had mostly rounded up the development of the Asshimar that would eventually go into mass production. So thanks to this, the Titans could simply use the Asshimar's test data to overhaul their machine. That being said, the performance and flight characteristics of their machine were superior, and it also had the advantage in terms of weaponry. The beam rifle it used was visually similar, but also had the option of turning into a beam axe or a beam sickle, giving it better close combat capabilities, and it had a spread beam gun mounted on the left side of its chest, a weapon that was inspired by that of the Dom. Plans also existed to attach extra modules on the side of the machine to have it act as a sub-flight system, but it's not known if they ever got further than the drawing board. Had the Titans' version of the Asshimar won out, this probably would have become a reality though. But while the Kehaar wouldn't end up being the mass production version, it was nonetheless a very important machine for the Titans. Not only would it serve as a prototype for the wound Warsis frame, as I just mentioned, but it would also be used to develop tactics and maneuvers for this new type of transformable mobile suit, a task that would be vital because, again, the Asshimar was the first successful machine of its kind. The beam gun then would serve as basis for the Gapland's Phaeton rifle, and lastly, the machine itself would be further developed into the Gundam TR6 Kehaar 2, also known as the Gundam TR6 Woundward Kehaar 2 form. As the name indicates, this was the Woundward with new equipment to bring it in line with the Asshimar, something that was especially obvious from its transformed state. But the new parts did much more than just change its shape. It had a giant antenna on its head for optimal communications with its wingmen, the shoulders now had thermonuclear jet engines and spread beam guns, and could also be used as shields, and the new attitude control binders also served as extra protection for the chest and sub-arms. Its color scheme then was also changed to the standard Titan's dark blue color scheme, but there were also units painted in yellow that were equipped with the inlay, and later on some units would be captured by Zeon and painted in a red color scheme. These units would also have their model number changed to reflect their new allegiance, and of these captured units, 6 would be equipped with a Psychome system and be used as bodyguards for the leader of Zeon, Alicia Zavi. And last but not least, the units could also be outfitted with a sensor radome, turning them into the Kehaar 2 EWAC mode, sometimes also called the EWAC Kehaar 2. The main goal of this was for the Kehaar units attached to the inlay. They would go out and do reconnaissance and report their findings back to the inlay in real time. And this radome was also developed with compatibility with other mobile suits in mind, and thus the EWAC Asshimar became a thing. And because the design of the radome mixed very well with the aerodynamical design of the Asshimar, the machine was very successful and would still be in use after the Grips War. And apparently, it would also be nicknamed Pancake after the equally pancake-shaped XF5U from World War II. And to wrap up our loose ends from the Kehaar's development, there was also the Advanced Kehaar 2, a unit that was, at its core, the regular Kehaar 2, but upgraded with components from the Queenly and the Hrairu 2. It had upgraded legs, a weapon cargo container on each shoulder, and a high mega cannon on its head. The next up for the Asshimar line then was the RAS-96 Anksha, a machine that would also incorporate design elements from the Gapland, like the movable shield binders on the forearm, and would place an emphasis on keeping ease of production in mind, something that was accomplished by using standardized parts from the Jagan line. And this became immediately obvious when looking at the head. Although, it's also said that this change was intentionally done by the Federation brass because they wanted to distance this machine from both Zeon and the Titans as much as possible. The other big differences then were more flight surfaces for better maneuverability and a more well-rounded arsenal of weapons. It has a powerful beam rifle on each of the shield binders, 2 beam sabers stored in the knees, and a pair of 60mm Vulcan guns. Finally then, unlike the Kehaar who only had plans to carry allied mobile suits, the Anksha was capable of carrying allied machines on its back when it was in mobile armor mode. All in all, the Anksha was a formidable and versatile machine on paper, but unfortunately this didn't always translate that well into reality. But this wasn't where the legacy of the Asshimar would end. Many decades later, during the age of the warring space states, the design of this flying donut would once again be dusted off and pushed into service, this time by Cyclops. The armor was made thicker, the legs now also transformed into a donut, making it a double donut, the face was changed and it was outfitted with a new antenna for the communication network and data management of Cyclops. As for the weapons then, it still just had one single gun, and now it was a conventional machine gun rather than a beam rifle, because at this time, technology had begun to regress and people were beginning to lose the know-how of beam weaponry. This new machine was dubbed the Asshimac and was mass-produced by Cyclops. And there is one more unit that needs to be mentioned in this video, the Musica. Rather than being a development of the Asshimar though, this was a development of the Barzam that attempted to replicate the Asshimar. The idea being that even though it wasn't as expensive as some of the prototype machines, it was still relatively expensive compared to other mass production machines, so they wanted to try and replicate the Asshimar's drum frame with a movable frame, such as the one used by the Barzam. How successful it was isn't known because, for now, this unit has only appeared in the UC Engage mobile game, so we don't know if this mobile suit was ever made, let alone if it ever saw combat. And finally then, I want to end on a fun fact. Because of the distinct flying saucer-esque appearance of the Asshimar, it's said that the Earth Federation received an increased amount of flying saucer reports around the areas where the Asshimar was being tested. And that has been all for the development history of the Asshimar. So let me know down below which one is your favorite version of the Asshimar and why it's the Kehaar 2. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more similar content like this in the future. A big thanks to Bai for sponsoring this video, another big thanks to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.